It is often described as NATO's Achilles heel, a strip of sparsely populated land stretching some 65 kilometers on the border between the NATO states Poland and Lithuania. The Suwalki Gap is a challenge for NATO to defend. The strip connects the Russian exclave Kaliningrad with Belarus. If Russia and Belarus were ever to invade and close that gap, NATO members Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, they would be cut off from allies to the south. Would an attempt to repel the Russians be a mission impossible? DW's Terry Schultz traveled through the Suwalki Gap with British NATO troops who are training for anything but.
These NATO troops based in Poland are moving through what the alliance considers perhaps its most vulnerable area, a land corridor nicknamed the Suwalki Gap. It's located between two NATO allies, Poland and Lithuania, but also between Russia and Belarus. This is cause for concern because it's the only way for NATO to reach its Baltic state allies by land.
There is only one way to get to Latvia, and that is up through Lithuania and the Suwalki Gap.
That means if Moscow were to seize the Suwalki corridor, Latvia and the other Baltic states would be cut off and could only be reached by sea. The commanding officer of this British squadron, on its way to an exercise in Latvia, says training in the region is vital.
For us, going up to Latvia provides a new real estate, a new training opportunity, the opportunity to go up against a live simulated enemy, which puts my soldiers to the test.
Some of those tests are just about getting troops to where they need to be. This convoy had 3 vehicles break down, causing many hours of delay. But Parker says figuring out how to get them back on the road was part of the training he wanted his troops to get. An overnight at the NATO base in Lithuania gave the British troops a chance to rest and refill their tanks. Hosted by German Army Lieutenant Colonel Andreas Kirchner, who commands the multinational battle group, keeping watch from the other end of the Suwalki corridor.
We conduct here trainings in order to be prepared if Russian or Belarusian forces are crossing the border to Lithuania. Mobility is always very crucial for military operations. And of course, it's a strong sign to show that we are not sitting in our barracks, but we are able to move between the Baltic states.
They're able to move, but could they move faster than Russian forces? That's an open question NATO may not be doing enough to answer.
This motorcade had a police escort to guarantee access to the highway and quick processing at the border crossings. But in case of a real crisis, fewer things would be under NATO's control. And that's why some experts are saying the alliance should stage more snap exercises to practice what might happen if Russia were to attack with no warning.
To experience that, NATO's former top military commander, General Philip Breedlove, strongly advocates more no-notice exercises in Suwalki and beyond, which would push troops, in his words, to failure, to come back stronger.
We need to give our forces hard problems to solve and force them to think outside the box. It's more than getting to an exercise area and setting up camp. We need to be tested.
In the quiet city of Suwalki, residents are accustomed to hearing such talk, especially after Russia launched war on Ukraine. Some are dismissive, others thankful that worst-case scenarios so far remain just hypotheses of wargaming and planning.
I think there is nothing to worry about. I feel rather safe.
I was a little bit terrified that it can, as well happen to us.
Okay. If we weren't in NATO, the situation would be completely different. Probably we would be attacked.
NATO military officials acknowledge a more aggressive Russia means they need to increase their readiness for any potential crisis, which includes making sure Suwalki remains an open corridor and is less of a gap.
That was Terry Schultz reporting there. Terry Schultz, she joins me now from Brussels. Good evening to you, Terry. You laid out the challenges in defending the Suwalki corridor, but does anyone really think that Russia plans to try to ever seize it?
Brent, who knows anymore? People didn't think Russia planned to try to seize Ukraine, and that's the circumstances everyone brings up. NATO simply has to presume that Russia may try to do that. Now, there were a lot more worries in recent months when the late Yevgeny Prigozhin was sent to Belarus, and there were even rumors circulating publicly that his Wagner group was actually plotting to seize the Suwalki Gap. That may have just been to make NATO nervous, but nonetheless, it certainly reminded everyone of the precariousness of this situation, of this geography. And that's why General Breedlove, the former Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, is saying NATO needs to up its game in training for any eventuality. I'd like to play more of my interview with him, where he explains more about how important it is to train, as he says, to failure.
If we really look back, say 20 months ago, towards just before the beginning of this war, those four nations were vocal and completely right about Russia long before the rest of the West was right about Russia. And so we have nations that are talking to us about how important this land is. These same nations have gotten it right with Russia faster and more often than we have. I believe we need to pay attention.
But are they saying that we need more exercises?
We have gradually increased the size of the force that is on high readiness. But the fact of the matter is the main response to Russian aggression is to put more forces on high readiness. Now, may I just share with you how much I love, respect, and want to lift up my NATO partners. I think you know I served 8 times in Europe, culminating in the SACEUR tour. And so it's a pretty fair bet to say that I'm a NATO supporter. But may I just offer a bit of a difference among NATO forces? And that is there are a few who actually test themselves significantly on their readiness. And there are fewer of that few that actually exercise then to failure. A lot of exercises are more ceremonial and about the logistics and pulling them off than they are actually testing a force to failure.
Things are going to go wrong, and you should want them to go wrong on these exercises, right?
Well, yes, we learn by being exposed to our problems and our failures. And a responsiveness, again, is what we have included in our answer to Russia's attack. We are telling our forces they have to be ready in certain amounts of time. If Russia decides to invade a NATO an area, hopefully we will have good intelligence that tells us to be ready. But we can't rely on it. And also note that if Russia decides to invade and we start to respond, what Russia knows is that if we get our kit to the fight, they lose. So we're not going to get an unobstructed path. We are going to be moving under attack.
Moving under that attack. Those are some incredibly candid words there coming from General Breedlove. I should say retired General Breedlove. I wonder if he would have said those things when he was still serving. But he's definitely now urging NATO to push itself harder in training. So let me ask you, Terry, the exercise that you were just on, how did that compare to what Breedlove is recommending?
So as General Breedlove says, this motorcade that I joined, this convoy, if Russia were to presume that NATO is moving to defend the Baltic states further north, it would attack this convoy. So that's something that, of course, if this were an exercise on military mobility, they would have to keep in mind. Now, I should be clear. The exercise that I joined, the Royal Lancers, who were moving from their base in Poland to Latvia, were not exercising military mobility. They were moving to go up and place play the enemy against Canadian forces, which they were looking forward to because that's pretty fun. But nonetheless, the part of the exercise that I joined was looking at how you get there through the Suwalki Gap. Now, Major Guy Parker, who you saw there in my piece, said that he predicted 2 of his vehicles would break down on this 2 days of travel. That's simply something they know statistically. So 3 vehicles broke down, but he also made sure that his mechanics could fix them. And this is something he very much wanted to test his people on. Sure, in a wartime scenario, you could abandon those vehicles and move on so you could move more quickly, but he accepted the delays that it would cause in order to make sure that they knew how to fix vehicles on the move. So in fact, Major Parker was trying to do some of what General Brilev was saying, and he said that he would like to do more of these exercises. So yeah, there are people inside the military that very much want to test themselves to their limits.
Yeah, I think people think that that's exactly what they're doing. As you are reporting, that may not necessarily be the case. Excellent reporting. Terry Schultz in Brussels tonight. Terry, thank you.